So get your ass whipped for a cause. Ron Paul has been getting his ass whipped for a cause for the past decade.
But Ron Paul,
but
Ron Paul is doing it now after having several runs for president as a third-party candidate. Now he's back with the Libertarian.
Actually, I think he had one, and that was in 1988. And for the last, I don't know how many presidential cycles, he's run as a Republican, and he has moved the party. Yes, they keep calling him a crazy guy from Mars, but he has moved the party. The party has gone to the Ron Paul position on point after point. Why isn't Rocky Anderson doing that if he wants to take on the powerful?
Right. And I wouldn't call him crazy. I'd call him more Harvey Dent. He's one acid splash away from being, half lunatic. So I'd give Ron Paul.
Which one? Ron Paul, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, just his foreign policy is what people go like, this guy's out of his mind.
His foreign policy is what makes people like him.
Exactly.
Yeah, but he goes against like 150 years.
To your point, what you were saying, he's been talking about these fiscal issues for years, and he finally has a platform. When you look at his fiscal and economic policy, the man's a soothsayer, and he's right on. But as
Are we still talking about Ron Paul?
We're still talking about. Hey,
but
he's been right. Exactly. But when he opens his mouth on foreign policy, a lot of conservatives just click out.
I disagree. I think a lot of conservatives and liberal. I think a lot of conservatives love the idea of bringing the troops home and of not funding other countries with foreign aid, and a lot of liberals love the idea of not having these stupid, costly, destructive wars.
But what I think is interesting about Ron Paul, that I think the GOP establishment is finally waking up to, is the way that he's running his campaign. This is a man that's been able to bring in the youth vote, to bring in money raising grassroots strategy. So it's ironic to me that his model of running the campaign, because out of all the candidates that are still within the GOP primary fight, I think he's the one that can actually take it to the convention.
And why is he bringing in all these young voters? Because of his foreign policy, these are the young voters who don't want to go on.
And his drug war policy.
If you're a Republican, man, there's no way that you're going to look at a guy like Ron Paul and go, he could beat Obama. No way.
Well, as Dennis Kucinich said, I'm electable if you vote for me. And when it comes to third-party candidates, I want to bring up Ralph Nader, who I don't blame for George Bush getting the White House. I blame 90,000 people in Florida who knew they were a battleground state and voted Nader anyway. But Nader...
I blame 5 people on the Supreme Court who said they don't have to count the ballots.
But here's the thing about Nader.
I blame the dead people who voted.
Ralph Nader has... Okay, we're not going to do this one again. Ralph Nader has endorsed Ron Paul.
We're going to get to that.
Ralph Nader, who quasi-endorsed John Edwards in 2008, has now endorsed Ron Paul, which I was like, this is the guy who got the government to put seatbelts in cars, and now he's going to endorse a guy who wants the government to stop putting seatbelts in cars because it's an infringement on liberties. I was shocked by it. Were you guys surprised to hear that the bigger than Chomsky on the left is now endorsing Ron Paul?
No, because I think Ron Paul is more batshit crazy when it gets to his... if you look at the big issues, I don't think anybody looks at his seatbelt policy's out of his mind. I don't think anybody looks at that. I think they're looking at his foreign policy and going...
Which part of his foreign policy is crazy?
Well, no foreign aid.
Well, that's crazy, exactly. But a lot of Republicans like that.
They like it because they want the money here. That's easy to say, forget it.
But is that not a conservative point of view?
Not necessarily, because they buy our shit.
That was Rick Perry's only position, was stop all foreign aid. So why wouldn't Rick Perry...
why he got his butt kicked.
Well, okay, fine, but nobody called him batshit crazy for calling for it.
I think I'm a Texan, and I
think batshit crazy is a little bit...
batshit crazy.
And I want to point out, we're not here...
When he sits there and says that it's okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon, I don't agree with that.
Right. And I want to say, we're not here to put down Rick Perry. We're just denying him clemency. But I was really fascinated to see that Ron Paul, a former third-party candidate, could pick up the endorsement as a Republican from Ralph Nader, the former third-party candidate. Either Ralph Nader is just determined to destroy his legacy forever, or, Ron Paul is the only candidate with a message that appeals to both sides of the spectrum.
Ralph could just be pissed. He could just be pissed off. That's what I would be like. You know what? I'm going to piss some people off. Why don't I just do this? I'm mad at what happened to me last time, and I'm going to endorse the guy. Who's the most loon? That guy. Let's go with that guy. And, it mixes it up a little bit.
I thought you said it was Rick Perry. Who's the biggest loon?
Who's still involved, I would say.
Well, the most...
Well, then you have Rick Santorum.
Yeah, but I think people would see through it. They go, Ralph, now we know. Ralph, now we know you're just screwing around.
Well, but I thought judging the Republican Party on who's the most batshit crazy.
Well, I do think that it is very telling that Ron Paul did spend many years as a libertarian cranking out those newsletters that he didn't write, but his name is signed to.
Right.
And now he's doing even better since he's re-entered the two-party system. He's getting more traction now and much more coverage than he ever would have gotten as a libertarian candidate. Ask Gary Johnson about that. But historically, 100 years ago this year, Theodore Roosevelt had the most successful third-party candidacy in history when he quit the Republican Party to run as a bull moose progressive. He had essentially handpicked William Howard Taft, that guy to be his successor, and then he ran against him and got over 1 million votes. Of course, Woodrow Wilson won, but that's the most famous example of a president abandoning his own party.
Taft, not a good example for childhood obesity funding.
Not very good. Michelle Obama wept.
Can I repeat the point, though, that you just made? He was a Republican, and then he founded the Progressive Party.
Yes.
And so, we hear a lot of people saying that, progressive means you're a liberal, progressive means you're a Democrat. No, progressive means you're a progressive. And as a progressive, Teddy Roosevelt set aside the national parks.
Sure.
Which would be, the greatest communist act that any president could ever do if it was done today. He busted the corporations. He was the trust buster.
He was the trust buster,
right?
and the reason he left the GOP was because he was disgusted about the influence of corporate money in politics. I can't imagine that happening today, but I'm of the belief that
he took care of it.
Right, but I'm of the belief
killed animals and went to
But
war,
hang on, here's
so
my thing. Yeah, he would have loved Iraq, but
Right,
I think that sane people are progressive in some areas, conservative in other areas. There's overlap with all. No one's completely liberal or completely conservative. You ever met someone all the way to the fringe? You're like a Star Trek convention goer.
But
in
you
Hollywood,
just said progressive in some areas.
Yeah.
You just said progressive in some areas, conservative in others.
Yes, I do agree.
Opposites.
I think every human,
they're not
that's what I'm
opposites.
saying. They're not
Right.
opposites. And so we can say that Dick Cheney is to the left of Barack Obama on marriage equality. We can say that George Bush tripled AIDS funding to Africa.
Yeah.
We can say Bill Clinton balanced a budget 8 years in a row. I hate these terms. I think that they're outdated and they're just designed, if you'll excuse me, by the upper 1% to keep us fighting each other. And so I think this is why Ron Paul does appeal to so many people, because he does appeal to
Yeah, well,
both
I think there
sides.
are people that toe the party line and that you just go, whatever the liberal ideal is, that's what I'm going to jump on board with. But yeah, I think the people in office or running for office, they're going to have to play games with, with where they're from, obviously what state they're from matters,
Right.
So I can't, Ron Paul can't just go doing everything that,
We should also say that when you were talking about that he would have a difficult time against Obama, Ron Paul would.
Yeah,
the fact is,
he'd get creamed.
in the debate he would get creamed?
Is that a word?
I'm not sure about that.
I think he would.
Actually, he would get to the left of him on foreign policy.
Well, before we go to our break,
And he'd pull away a lot of voters from Obama, which none of these other guys running
if
will
Ron
do.
Paul ran as a third-party candidate, I don't know which party he'd hurt more.